This is my kind of broken VFR. It doesn't look very broken, but it's got a few problems. It lives here in my garden. It has the wing mirror just folded in because that's the only way I can get it through the gate. And I've gotten a few years of really good use out of this. I bought it in 2017 with 25,000 miles on the clock, and now it's 2021, so 4 years later. In fact, I bought it on the 14th of November, and I'm recording this on the 13th of November, so it's pretty much exactly 4 years, and it's got just under 49k on the clock. So what's that, 24,000? So I've almost doubled it. I think if there weren't a pandemic, I would actually have doubled the mileage on this bike in those 4 years, which is impressive because it's actually 18 years old. And yeah, there's a few things that are wrong with it. Back in 2019, I crashed this bike in Austria. I sort of glanced off a car here, and then my pannier, which is here, just hit the rear corner of the car square on, and I fell over on the other side. So I caused quite a bit of damage, but I repaired all of that. So you can see this doesn't quite match up because of that. And yeah, like, it lives here in the garden, so it gets rained on and stuff, and that's part of the issues that I have with it, is just the weather, the environment, because it's getting kind of old. And yeah, like, I've been putting off doing a lot of maintenance on it, so it needs a bunch of things done to it, but I've been putting it off because, I mean, I use it a lot, and I'm not super mechanically inclined, which means that although I can do all the things that are wrong with it, actually getting them done would take me a long time to do, and that would mean not riding it anywhere and having a space in which to work. I do have most of the tools that I need. For that part's fine. But I've just been putting it off because, I don't have time to do that. And I do a little bit at the weekend and then leave it half done, and then come back the next weekend and then leave it half done again. And it's not the best way of working when this is the only way you have of getting around. And this is my only, transport. I can get trains from nearby, but they're not super convenient. Especially if I want to go visit my friends. So this is how I get around. And kind of ironically to that sentiment, I think this is probably 2 weeks before this video goes out, but I've not rode this bike in at least 2 weeks because it passed its MOT despite all of its problems, but it's gotten so unreliable that I don't want to ride it anywhere. So there are a bunch of things that I've fixed over time. One of the big ones is sort of down in here. So after the crash in Austria, I discovered that the stator had been completely cooked. So there was no power being generated. I think I had one phase, maybe, out of three. I'll stick in the photograph that I took of the stator after I pulled it out. But also, after I did that work, because it's inside the crankcase, you have to do, you've got to drain all of the oil out of it. And what happened is, I stripped the threads that the sump plug threads into, so I had to get it a whole new sump. And that was really annoying because the exhaust had to come off, and that exposed a problem with the exhaust that I'm going to talk about in a minute. But also, the heated grips got broken. So these are not the heated grips that were on it when I bought it. These are brand new heated grips, and those are aftermarket. And I never glued this on. I left this floating, but it is now glued because I took it into a Honda dealership for a service, and the guy at the dealership was like, "Oh, that's rotating. I better glue it in place." And a professional Honda mechanic at a Honda men dealer decided that this was the position in which it needed to be glued. Like, there's no way you can hit that just like in the moment. But it works, so it passes the MOT. It doesn't matter that you can't hit it. The cooling system, VFR is wonderful, amazing, awful side-mounted radiators. That had a mysterious problem. I don't know what was wrong with it. I think it might have been airlocked. A dealership at some point just undid all the pipes, put them back together, and it worked fine. So whatever was wrong with that got itself fixed. The front forks, so the stanchions had some rust on them, and that caused me some sealing issues, so those got replaced. And obviously, as you can see, this is not an original part from this bike. This is a complete replacement because the previous part had a crack from, I think, here all the way up to here. And that was never going to get repaired. I did want to repair it and have it sort of be a part of the bike's character, but it needed to go. And there's a few things wrong with the fairing in general. Also, so in here somewhere there's an oil line that goes all the way up to the oil cooler, which is up here somewhere. And that line and its opposite number on the other side were pretty badly corroded, and I replaced them with a used part from eBay that was in much better condition, but it wouldn't seal. We tried so much stuff, we could not get this thing to seal. What would happen is you turn the bike on, if it was cold, you just get like a stream of oil out of the bike because it's right after the oil pump. And after a little while, the engine would warm up and some thermal expansion would happen, and it'd seal up. But when you started it, it would just like oil would go everywhere. And I'm not sure how my friend Jez fixed that. I think he just like gasketed it instead of trying to seal it with an O-ring. I think he just gasketed the absolute heck out of it. But that's fine now, as long as I never have to take it off. So let's hope the sump doesn't need replacement. So there's also this luggage rack. Well, there's two luggage racks actually. There's this one. There's a Givi one. This is also a Givi one, but there are separate pieces. This one was on the bike when I got it, and this one I added, but they're kind of lopsided. So if you come around to the back, you can see that like that top box carrier is skewed, and I don't know if that was the crash or if it was always like that, but it's not the best. And then like the actual pannier rack itself doesn't really sit quite right. I don't know if this is going to capture on camera, but like this bit is slightly bent inwards. So when I hit the car in Austria, this bent slightly inwards, and the pannier that was here, like the latch that goes into this bit, just snapped right off. I still actually have that pannier and I use it all the time. I just bungee it to the other pannier and that works. Which is janky as all hell, and I want to replace this, but it's been discontinued, so that's kind of an issue. So the exhaust, it looks nice, it looks shiny, that's alright, but then down here, I mean this is normal exhausty stuff, but you'll note that this clamp, that's not original, sort of bunks against that. And kind of the problem here is here where the pipe comes out of the cap box, this bit sleeves over it, but the pipe that comes out that this sleeves over is absolutely rotten. So this is all like JB Weld sealed and stuff, and it leaks quite badly. It makes a horrendous noise, as you may have seen in some of my previous videos, and I think it might be leaking from like here. I don't know what that white stuff is. This is just a heat shield. That's like really, this corrosion isn't really dangerous or anything. But that's one of the headers. So that's a cylinder head right there. And these two pipes come down here. And there's a join, and they go into these pipes, which go around and in the front, and it's all very complex. But the simple fact is that this exhaust is not long for the world. And I have a full Delcovic stainless system sitting up in my living room, waiting for me to have the time to like take all of the fairings off and take all of this stuff off and remove that rack and deal with the bent bolt on the other side, like the other version of this one, because all of this has to come off to do the exhaust. But it'll be really nice to have that new exhaust on, because it doesn't leak any air, and it might give me a couple extra horses, which would be, I mean, nice, I guess. I'm pretty sure this bike does not have the 100 or so at the wheel that it had when it came from the factory. That, however, is not what is causing me to not ride this bike. What's actually causing me to not ride this bike is the electrical system. So it has a few electrical foibles. Like this switchgear is not entirely reliable. That's meant to spring. These aren't super responsive. Sometimes you turn the main beams on and they don't come on until you turn them off and then turn them back on again, which is kind of weird. I have no idea how this bike actually made it through its MOT, to be honest. But somewhat more annoying, sometimes just like the power cuts out. Like, I don't know how much of the bike is cutting out. I feel like it might be the fueling or the fuel pump or something like that cuts out. It's related to something that's down in here. There are a couple of connectors in that area. And like one of the things is if you turn on the turn signals, sometimes it'll happen when that happens and they go through a connector that goes to like a fuel pump controller. So it might be that. But yeah, the electrics have gone super temperamental. Like all of the connectors are corroded, like the connectors in this side are corroded as well. But I do have a plan. I have a plan to sort this out. And that plan is to essentially, when I do the exhaust, all of this stuff's going to come off anyway. So I'm just going to rebuild all of the connectors with new terminals, with Deutsche connectors, which are waterproof, and go over as many cable runs as I can find and check out the integrity of all of the cables in those runs and make sure that there are no like weird shorts or wear or anything like that. But again, like that's a big job that I can't just do in one sitting at the weekend, and that means it's just not been able to come off the road. There's a whole bunch of things wrong with sort of the bodywork in general. You know, you got this mismatch. Obviously, we talked about that. This bar end is loose. I don't know what's going on with that. You can tighten it up, but it doesn't stay tight. There's a story behind this. I was working on the bike and I was getting very annoyed, and I threw my needle nose pliers down on the ground, and they hit like rubber end first, bounced up and came down like pointy end first in there and out here. And maybe at some point I'll replace the seat, but it costs a few £100, and it's not a big deal. There are loads of like clips and stuff that are a bit broken inside just because of the crash, particularly like over this side. There are some clips that are broken. I think it's this one. The thing that screws into is broken, and one of the things I need to do when I take this off is to basically glue that bit back in, because you could just pull that screw out. It's not actually screwed into anything. Yeah. Is there anything else wrong with the bodywork? I made some notes. What have I got? Oh yeah, the misalignment. So kind of, this is a little bit off. You can see, so there's a gap here, but not there. This hole doesn't have a screw in it because the holes don't line up. Like if you just looked at the bike, you wouldn't notice. And I don't know if it's like the subframe is maybe slightly bent or just some of the mountings are slightly bent. But that's almost certainly from the crash. What else? Yeah, that was from I slipped on a wet leaf or something when I was parking it and snapped this bit off, and I lost my mirror. I snapped the mirror here, and I went to a shop, and I was like, well, I called the shop first. I was like, look, I need a wing mirror for an 03 VFR, and they were like, we don't stock those parts anymore, really, because it's old. I was like, oh. And then I went there for something else later that day, and the guy was like, oh, you're the VFR guy. I was in the back, and I found, like, just in a bin of old bits that we took off other bikes, I found this mirror. I was like, oh, okay, cool. And he's like, yeah, it's got this stuff around the edge where, like, water's gotten in behind the mirror and degraded a bit. And I was like, oh, yeah, it's fine. It'll get me back to London. 4 years later, it's still there. Because I can see out of it fine. Like, it's... Like, there you go. This bit, most of the mirror is fine, and even the bit that's not fine, it's not such a big deal. So it's that. Did I write down anything else? I think we already did the heat shield. Yeah, that's all of that. So I did not talk about this mushroom. The bracket that this mushroom screws into has been crushed to about half of its original size. So that's why there should be a bit more of a standoff here, but like I have to get that in there. And yes, the location has changed. This is a week later, and events have slightly overtaken the previous finished this video that I recorded. So I still have not ridden this bike. Now its insurance is out. It's just not reliable enough to ride, and that's really getting to me because I can't really go visit my friends at all or go out for a nice ride or whatever. And I had arranged something to take the edge off of that, but there was some scheduling difficulties, which is why I'm re-recording this. But I wanted to go over my plan for this bike. So over the winter, I was going to put a gazebo up in the garden and be very miserable fixing all of the stuff. But it turns out that I could get access to this garage. This is actually the landlord's garage. I normally don't have access to it, but I asked, and he was, very nicely gave me a key for it. And basically what I am gonna do over winter is that fairing is gonna come off, and this fairing is gonna come off. All of these luggage racks are gonna come off. The exhaust is gonna come off. That front bit is not gonna come off. There are some relays underneath the dash that I'm not gonna be able to get to, but everything else, all of the other connectors are gonna get rebuilt with new terminals and new connectors, Gonna go through all of the cable runs that I can find and take a look for shorts and wear. I'm gonna replace the exhaust, and then I'm gonna put everything back on. This slightly bent top box carrier will be going back on. This pannier rack I don't know about. I might see if I can get one of the newer pannier racks. Not entirely sure about that yet. And then sometime in the new year, this will be ready once more to be insured and ridden again. But for now, it's going to have to live here in the garage. If you like this video, give it a like. Check out some of my other videos. Don't forget to subscribe if you like them. Hit that bell. And if you really enjoy this content, then why don't you hit up the coffee link in the description below.